A History of Us by Joy Hakim, Volume A, Chapter 26. John Smith. The Jamestown colony might not have survived without Captain John Smith. He was a tough, no-nonsense man who worked hard and expected everyone else to do the same. Some people admired him, others hated him. Pocahontas admired him and saved his life, twice. She was a bright-eyed Indian princess who was about 12 years old when the settlers first came to Virginia. The pale-skinned men and their strange ways intrigued her, and she came to visit them often. Sometimes she just turned cartwheels in the middle of the Jamestown settlement. Sometimes she brought food. It was John Smith who seemed to interest her most. In him she recognized a person whose intelligence and curiosity matched her own. Like her father, the great Powhatan, Smith seemed fearless. Many of the settlers hated Smith, but they recognized that he was a leader. When he went back to England, even his enemies missed him. They said he was a braggart and that he couldn't possibly have done all the things he said he had done. He might have exaggerated a bit, but he really did do those things, like selling his school books and running away to sea, or going off to Hungary to fight the Turks. There, on one bloody afternoon, Smith beheaded 3 Turks. A grateful Hungarian prince granted him a coat of arms with 3 Turks' heads emblazoned on it. He wasn't a Hungarian hero for long. He was captured and sent as a slave to Constantinople, where a Turkish woman bought him. But her relatives didn't think much of him, and he was sold again. This time, he killed his master, escaped, got thrown into the Mediterranean Sea, wandered through Russia, Poland, and Germany doing heroic things, and ended up in North Africa fighting pirates. Naturally, someone who liked adventure the way John Smith did would be attracted to the adventure of a new world. Besides, like Sir Walter Raleigh, he had an idea that America could someday be an English land. He understood that there was more to be gained in the New World than gold. He realized that there were great opportunities for men and women with energy and courage. John Smith was 28 when he took over the leadership of the Jamestown colony, and things were in a bad way. This was his motto: if any would not work, neither should he eat. There were some grumblers, but everyone wanted to eat, so everyone worked. Smith went and got food from the Indians. He learned their language, and he learned the ways they hunted and fished. He had been a soldier and he was tough, but he was also fair and honest. The Powhatans soon understood that. They respected him and he respected them. They called him Werowance, or Chief, of Jamestown, and that was what he was. The Native Americans seemed undecided about how to act toward these strangers in their land. What would you have done if you were a Powhatan? How would you have treated the English leader, John Smith? He had goods they wanted, axes and shovels and blankets, so they traded with him. He was a natural trader. He took his English goods to their villages, and he came back to Jamestown with boatloads of corn. They told him of the prediction that men from the east would destroy their villages. He told them he came in peace. Still, the Indians couldn't seem to make up their minds. Sometimes they entertained Smith with dances and feasting. Other times they tried to kill him. Once he was brought before an Indian werowance and he expected to die. He pulled out his compass, showed how it worked, talked about the heavens and the earth, and soon had a tribe of friends. Another time, he was taken to the great Powhatan, who seemed to have several Indian warriors ready to beat his brains out. But Pocahontas, who was the Powhatan's favorite daughter, came to his rescue. She put her head on Smith's, and Powhatan let him live. Was it a prearranged ceremony, or did Pocahontas actually save his life? No one knows for sure, but the Indians ended up adopting Smith into their tribe and making him an honorary chief. Now, he was a member of Pocahontas's family. When some other Indians tried to ambush Smith, Pocahontas warned him of the trap. Cats are supposed to have 9 lives. John Smith had even more. While exploring the Chesapeake Bay, he was stung by a deadly stingray and was in such agony that he had his grave dug. He recovered and ate the stingray. The place where this happened, near the mouth of Rappahannock River in Virginia, is now called Stingray Point. John Smith was asleep in his boat when some gunpowder exploded. It tore the flesh from his body and thighs 9 to 10 inches square. To quench the tormenting fire frying him in his clothes, he leapt overboard in the deep river, where he was near drowned. Smith was so badly wounded that he had to return to England. Pocahontas was told he was dead. John Smith never got back to Virginia, but he did get to New England, which he named, and he mapped its coast as he had mapped much of Virginia. He wrote many books and became famous because of them. I am no compiler by hearsay, but have been a real actor, he said. And so he was. We still read his books today because they are so interesting. Pictures and sidebars. That first summer in Jamestown, the settlers barely made it. Our drink was water, our lodging castles in the air, they reported. With this lodging and diet, our extreme toil in bearing and planting palisades strained and bruised us. From May to September, those that escaped lived upon sturgeon and sea crabs. 50 in this time were buried. A palisade is a fence of pointed wooden stakes set firmly in the ground, built for defense. But those early days weren't all misery. After their first Christmas in Virginia, Captain Smith wrote, "We were never more merry, nor fed more plenty of good oysters, fish, flesh, wild fowl, and good bread, nor never had better fires in England than in the dry, smoky houses of K12, nor fed more plenty." John Smith trading with Indians. Pocahontas, the Powhatan's favorite daughter. John Smith lies captive before the Powhatan, while Pocahontas pleads for his life to be spared. What happened to Pocahontas? Pocahontas had 2 names. Her real name was Matoax. It means little snow feather. Pocahontas, her nickname, means playful. Once, when Pocahontas was visiting some Potomac Indians, an Englishman lured her onto his ship and wouldn't let her off. He took Pocahontas as a hostage to Henrico, held her there, taught her the Christian religion, and gave her a new name, Rebecca. A young Englishman named John Rolfe had a plantation nearby. He fell in love with a beautiful Indian princess, and she fell in love with him. Rolfe married Pocahontas. It was a fine wedding, and it took place in the church at Jamestown. The Powhatan wouldn't come. Perhaps he feared a trap, or perhaps he was sad to see his daughter leave the Indian world. Pocahontas' marriage helped bring peace between Indians and colonists. Soon, Pocahontas had a baby, and John Rolfe was so proud he took his family to England. There, Pocahontas charmed everyone, even King James. And King James didn't charm easily. He was a bit of a grouch. The English people called her Lady Rebecca and treated her as the princess that she was. but she must have longed for a familiar face, someone she could talk to in her native language. Perhaps Pocahontas, wearing a long dress like a proper Englishwoman, didn't know in which world she belonged. When John Rolfe decided to go back to Virginia, she didn't want to go. She didn't feel at all well when they boarded a ship and sailed down the Thames River. Before they reached the open sea, she was so sick that her husband took her off the ship. It was smallpox. Pocahontas died and was buried in the churchyard at Gravesend, a town that is now part of London, but in those days was in the country. She was 22. When the Powhatan learned of his beloved daughter's death, the peace between Indians and settlers ended. An artist's interpretation of the baptism of Pocahontas, an event that is believed to have taken place in Virginia before her marriage to John Rolfe. A portrait of Pocahontas in European dress.